Hello everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Hatter Read series, where we are about to begin our read-through of Allen in Wonderland. Before we get into it, though, I just want to touch on a few things. First, I would ask that you please forgive any sort of stutters or fumbles or mispronunciation, anything like that. As I am not the world's most confident reader. While I am the author of all the books that you're going to be listening to here, that does not make me a wordsmith by any stretch of the imagination. And while I do know what all these words mean, I am highly susceptible to becoming tongue-tied. So just please bear with me on that. Otherwise, I just really want to take the opportunity to say that to be able to do this finally means the world to me, and it means even more to have you guys here with me. I hope that you enjoy this content and come back for the next episode and every episode in the future. So without further ado, we begin with the prologue. This isn't the child's tale that you might remember. I'm not that little schoolgirl, and I didn't fall down a rabbit hole. The creatures and people I've met were not the friendly, fun-loving forms of life you may have been told about, or at least some of them anyway. If you don't believe me, listen to this story. Step into my world, walk into my shoes, and dream my dream. This is my Wonderland. I won't tell you where I am, but I will tell you who I am. I am Allen, and I have a tale to tell should you choose to listen. Most of you know the story of a young girl named Alice who went to a magical land on the winds of a dream. This, however, is only one version of the story. The other is a far darker story from the twisted thoughts of a very mentally sick girl. I'll shed some vital light on my background. Alice is my great-great-aunt, so I know her adventures rather well. I can also tell you from first-hand experience that Wonderland is indeed real. So as you listen to my times there, I beg you to take the advice that a witty cat gave me in a question. Can you find the answers to your own questions? If so, then I leave you to decide which Wonderland is real. Chapter 1, Black Sheep. Where does my tale begin? As any good story should, we'll start at the beginning. When I was a boy, I wasn't like most others. I didn't like sports, the outdoors, or giving girls cooties, but rather solitude. I preferred to hide within myself because that seemed the only place where I was understood. I had a wild imagination, which, although I wasn't a bad kid, made my parents both look at and treat me with great fear. Whenever I'd tell my mother about a dream I had the night before, she would cry. This led my father to beat me, so I learned to keep my thoughts to myself. It wasn't until a few years later, however, that I learned the reason behind their actions. When I was 8, my father died from an unknown cause in his sleep. This loss pushed my mother into a deep depression where she would become mute. When he died, my father left me a series of journals. I'd never seen them before, which told me that they, as well as the note tied to them, must be read in secrecy if read at all. I then took the journals, with the note, to my favorite thinking spot in the woods, down by the river, and began reading their contents from the comfort of a rotting stump. The note appeared to be the last words of my father, dated the night he died. Dear son, I want you to know that you possess an amazing gift. Your imagination is something you must never lose. It is something of immense power and can be used for both good and evil. So don't tread on this responsibility lightly. With this warning, I share a secret I've regrettably kept from you. You have a great-great-aunt Alice, whose imagination was much like yours. She'd dream of things that seemed to challenge the ways of reality and God himself. You remind me so much of her, so happy and free. Tragedy overtook her, sadly, as she became orphaned by a house fire as a child. She would never recover, for her head became filled with illusions of places as she lost grip of her surroundings. This made Alice nothing short of an abomination to your mother. Inside Alice's journals are accounts of the world she saw, a place called Wonderland. They tell of the creatures she met and the many evils she faced there. Many do not think this place is real, but I do. I just never had the gifted eyes to see with. You, however, do, my son. I beg you, do not fear the world that lay among these pages, as your mother did. Embrace it with an open mind to find what I and so many others could not. Find Alice's Wonderland. Signed, the Mad Hatter. My father's signature on the note confused me, but I didn't question it. I was more interested in my father's plea to find Alice's Wonderland. So I read the journals day after day, morning to evening. I read adventures of a white rabbit, a disappearing cat, storytelling twins, a Mad Hatter, and a March Hare. I was also introduced to an evil, hot-headed queen and the monstrous Jabberwocky. No matter how much I read, though, Wonderland always seemed a world away. Chapter 2. Chasing Dreams. Sleep didn't come easy for years after that. At the age of 13, I was still having nightmares of the imaginary world the journals spoke of. I heard voices to things I couldn't see, laughing, crying, taunting, and screaming. One night, after tossing and turning, as usual, I heard a voice that seemed to bellow with a sort of call, someone's name. A faint whisper filled the room. Alice. I lay still in my bed to calm my scattered mind. I heard again, Alice. I then got out of bed and walked to the chanting books. I heard it again, Alice. I picked up the journals, and I felt as if there were something waiting to be released from within the covers. Although I was tempted, I didn't answer the voice in my room. To avoid the secret within, I instead took them back to that spot in the woods where I first read the journals. As I sat under my tree, the voice again called, Alice. After a long hesitation, I placed a hand on the front cover of the first book and quickly opened it. To my surprise, upon opening, the book fell silent. I felt a cold chill run down my spine as the wind died too. I sat in silence for a time before I heard the world fill once again with a subtle noise. When I looked up in the direction of the sound, I saw it. There, sitting on a branch in the darkness of the woods, was a lone white owl. I looked up at the owl, then at the books in my lap, then at the owl again, as if the books had cast the owl out. I watched as the owl sat, hooting, his eyes locked on me. Neither the owl nor I moved, but I found myself oddly drawn to him. I then decided to walk to him, slow and steady so I didn't scare him. As I inched closer to him, he locked his cold yellow eyes on me. Locked his cold yellow eyes on me as I looked into the darkness. When I finally reached the white owl's tree, I saw something that wasn't there before. In the shadow of the tree was what appeared to be a woman's apron. It was torn and bloody, with a ghostly demeanor. I was hesitant to touch it, but I eventually laid a gentle hand on it. As I did, a haunting vision of a girl in a beaten, broken, and weak stance appeared in my head. In a flash, she was there, and just as fast, she was gone. Bewildered, I took a step back, clutching my head, as if I was afraid it would fall off my shoulders. I looked up at the owl for reassurance, and it coaxed me to continue with a stern hoot. I stepped forward once again, took the apron in my hands. This time, taking it completely from the ground. I held it gently in my hands, carefully studying every tear and stain, being hypnotized by the hauntingly familiar clothing. After a few moments of holding the apron, I was brought back to the real world by the deafening sound of thunder and the sight of lightning. Soon after, the ground began to shake, and it collapsed under me. Free-falling, my screams were the last thing I heard. Then, nothing. Chapter 3. Familiar Stranger. My mind seemed to be running, even though I wasn't. The feeling of falling lasted almost forever, but it abruptly faded as I appeared to hit the ground. When I opened my eyes, I felt an odd sense of familiarity wash over me. I didn't know where I was, but I felt like I'd been there before. The land was strange and quiet. I got up off the cold ground and stumbled around to get my bearings back. I was alone here, but yet I didn't feel alone. My first thoughts about my surroundings didn't stay, but moved on to Alice's journals in my bag. I found a good place to sit and began searching the books, and realized why this place seemed so familiar. Alice had written about the place she woke up to when she arrived in Wonderland. From the sound of it, this was it. Now that I knew where I was, the next step was to figure out where I was going and how to get out. Instead of wandering around aimlessly in circles, I figured out that Alice's books could be used as a travel guide of sorts. While I was flipping through the pages, I got this chilling feeling that I was being watched. I decided to wait and see if anything was really watching me. The wind revealed no secrets, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I tried to tell myself which end was up, when all of a sudden I heard a branch snap behind me. I quickly whipped around to see what made the noise, but when I did, nothing was there. I officially thought I was losing my mind. Then and there, that was until I heard a voice. "Are you lost?" I revisited the place where I heard the noise, but still nothing appeared. The invisible spoke again. The invisible voice spoke again. "Do not try to convince me otherwise. Your mind already gave you away." I stood, marveled, and shocked at the fact that empty space was talking. Thin air, the very substance I breathed, had a voice. Not knowing what else to do, I decided to play along. I sheepishly questioned back. "Who are you? Show yourself." The voice sleekly replied, "As you wish." Just then, the voice took form. The empty space began to fill. High in a tree, two ghostly eyes and a maddening grin began to show. Wouldn't it be more appropriate to ask who I am? By the time the voice was fully revealed, the grin that hovered in the tree had belonged to a cat. I reeled backward when the cat appeared. I was in a bit of shock, but yet I wasn't truly surprised, because it seemed anything could happen in this world. Yet the cat seemed familiar. I recalled this creature in Alice's journals. When I brought the memory to the front of my mind, I phased back into the conversation. "You're the Cheshire Cat." The cat brought the tip of his tail to his forehead and saluted me with a chuckle, as he said, "At your service." He continued to speak. "And what may I have the pleasure of calling you?" I replied, "Alan. My name is Alan." The cat was quick to fire back in a sly tone. "Ah, Alan the Traveler." I stood silent, tall, and unmoved. Just then the creature's eyes broke their gaze on me and shifted to something else. I noticed out of the corner of my eye, as did the cat, that the books were lying on the ground next to the stump where I was sitting. The cat questioned with a grin as he looked at the books, "Traveler or reader?" I realized what he was referring to, and I stumbled over my words. Both? The cat chuckled as he jumped from the tree and walked toward the journals. "So tell me, Ellen, are you lost?" I again twisted my sentences. I don't know. Chesh pawed the books carefully and replied, "Well, you can't give an answer if you don't know the question." He grew quiet as he stared blankly at the journals, as if he found something. Seeing his condition, I asked, "Chesh, what is it?" I moved slowly so I didn't disturb him and followed his gaze to the book. I saw that his yellow eyes were locked on the cover of one of the journals. Near the bottom of the cover was two symbols that Chesh was interested in. I felt like I'd seen them before, and I had, on the last thing I saw before I left my world and entered this one, the apron. Chesh appeared absent, an empty shell with an almost startled expression. He then faintly whispered, "Alice, the savior of Wonderland." His lost gaze held strong as he mumbled, "It can't be." I finally broke his trance. "Chesh." He quickly cut me off. "How do you know Alice?" I replied, "She's my aunt." My words brought the creepy smile back to the cat's face. He quickly perked up. "Alan, kin of Alice, keeper of her secrets." His words stuck with me as I answered back, "I can't be here because of her. This is all just a dream." Chesh brought his eyes back to me. "Is it?" The grin still on his face. I stuttered, "Yeah, there's no reason I'm here. No other reason I'm here." "Ah, that is the question. Your purpose here has yet to be discovered." I fired back, "There is no purpose. This is a dream." Chesh jumped up on a stump next to the journals and tested me. "Tell me, Ellen, does this feel like a dream? Does everything you see around you feel like a dream?" I meekly answered, "I don't know." Chesh playfully rolled on his back and pawed the air as he said, Well, I don't feel much like a dream. It was then that I started losing my temper. Look, I just want to know why I'm here. Chess chuckled and said, maybe the reason you're here is to find the reason for being here. Frustration building in me now, I let out a grunt of disgust and snatched the books off the ground. The cat continued rambling through my rage. If you're going to follow in Alice's footsteps, start there. The cat pointed with a sleepy claw to the path in the woods. I was furious now. I'm not going to wander into the woods to find people I don't know. Jesh retreated with a grin as he jumped off the stump. Fine, have it your way. I don't know why I'm here. Fine, have it your way. I know why I'm here. You're the one who doesn't. But you know more than you think. Puzzled, I asked, what do you mean, cat? He chuckled. I simply mean that your clue is right in front of you. He gazed at the books. One little's way is the way all the same. Chesh jumped from the ground, back to the tree where he first appeared. If you find nothing now, the deeper you go, the more you'll see. I stood stuck on the thought that the name on the journals was mine. Just be sure that you capture your purpose while you can, because if you don't, like me, it will disappear. As the words rolled off his tongue, his form began to dissolve. The last thing I saw of him was his yellow eyes and a haunting smile, until it faded away. When he was gone, I took a second to realize that maybe my only way home was to take the path he pointed out. I then swallowed my pride and trudged into the woods. And that is where we're going to end this first episode. I don't want them to go on too long. But yeah, that's the first 3 chapters, you guys. I hope you enjoyed them and come back for episode 2, where we will tackle chapters 4, 5, and 6. Until then, we'll see you guys next time.